At first glance, the Pontiac Silverdome looked like the future. When it opened in 1975, it was the largest stadium in the National Football League, covering more than 80 acres and seating over 80,000 people for football games. Its white, air-supported roof rose above Pontiac like a permanent landmark, visible from Interstate 75 and from miles away across the flat Michigan landscape. Unlike older stadiums woven into dense urban neighborhoods, the Silverdome stood largely isolated, surrounded by vast parking lots designed to hold tens of thousands of cars. Every aspect of its layout assumed mass arrival, mass departure, and constant use. The stadium was built during a period when American cities believed that large infrastructure projects could secure long-term relevance. Bigger projects were assumed to be more resilient, more profitable, and more prestigious. Stadiums were no longer just places to watch sports. They were marketed as economic engines, capable of transforming entire cities through tourism, employment, and national exposure. For Pontiac, the Silverdome represented all of that hope in concrete form. The Detroit Lions had played at Tiger Stadium since the 1930s, but by the early 1970s, the economics of professional sports had shifted dramatically. Television revenue was rising, teams were becoming corporate assets, and stadiums were expected to generate income beyond ticket sales. Luxury suites, naming rights, and parking revenue were becoming essential. Tiger Stadium, while beloved, could not be expanded to meet those demands. Pontiac offered a solution. City officials proposed land, public funding, and political support to build a stadium that would meet modern expectations. Municipal bonds backed by taxpayers financed much of the project. The promise was straightforward. The Silverdome would attract investment, stabilize the local economy, and secure Pontiac's place in the regional hierarchy. Construction moved quickly, and engineering decisions reflected a desire to build something that felt unmistakably modern. The air-supported roof became the stadium's defining feature. Made from Teflon-coated fiberglass panels, it was held up by maintaining higher air pressure inside the stadium than outside. Fans entering the building felt the pressure change immediately as doors opened and closed. The roof allowed natural light to filter inside, creating a bright interior without traditional structural supports. At the time, the design was considered innovative and efficient. It reduced the need for steel beams and allowed for a vast, uninterrupted interior. But it also introduced long-term vulnerabilities. The roof required constant monitoring. Snow accumulation posed a serious risk during Michigan winters. Crews worked around the clock to adjust air pressure and remove snow. Any tear or puncture could compromise the system. Heating the massive interior during winter months consumed enormous amounts of energy. Operating costs were significantly higher than those of smaller stadiums. These expenses were manageable when attendance was high, but they left little margin for decline. When the Silverdome opened, those concerns were largely dismissed. The stadium quickly became one of the most recognizable venues in the country. It hosted Super Bowl XVI in January 1982, drawing global attention. In March 1987, WrestleMania III filled the stadium with more than 93,000 fans, setting an attendance record that stood for decades. The Rolling Stones performed there. Pope John Paul II held Mass there in 1987, drawing tens of thousands. Political rallies, conventions, and religious gatherings filled the calendar. For many fans, attending an event at the Silverdome was unforgettable. The walk from the parking lot felt long, almost ceremonial. Inside, the scale was overwhelming. When the stadium was full, the crowd noise created a unique atmosphere that felt larger than life. The Silverdome became part of personal memory for an entire generation. But even during its most successful years, the stadium's economics were fragile. The Silverdome was designed around constant high attendance. When crowds were full, the size felt impressive. When attendance dipped, the emptiness became impossible to ignore. Seats in the upper levels were far from the field, and fans often complained about sightlines. Sound dissipated quickly, making the stadium feel quieter than smaller venues, even when tens of thousands were present. Meanwhile, the region surrounding the Silverdome was changing. The Detroit metropolitan area was undergoing economic transformation. The auto industry, which had supported generations of workers, faced increasing pressure from automation, foreign competition, and factory closures. Jobs disappeared, population declined, tax revenue fell. Pontiac itself struggled with unemployment, reduced city services, and long-term financial instability. The Silverdome did not adapt to these conditions. It could not scale down operations when attendance declined. Staffing, utilities, and maintenance costs remained high, regardless of how many people showed up. The stadium required constant investment simply to remain functional. By the 1990s, stadium design elsewhere had shifted. New venues were smaller, more flexible, and designed around premium seating, luxury boxes, and year-round revenue streams. These stadiums generated income even when attendance dipped. They were easier to maintain and cheaper to operate. The Silverdome, by contrast, relied heavily on volume and lacked modern revenue features. Ownership disputes compounded the problem. The Silverdome was publicly owned, while the Detroit Lions were privately owned. Negotiations over renovations, upgrades, and responsibility for costs dragged on for years. The Lions wanted amenities comparable to newer stadiums. Pontiac wanted to avoid further public spending. Neither side wanted to absorb the full financial burden. Minor upgrades were made, but they did not address the stadium's fundamental limitations. By the late 1990s, it was clear that the Silverdome no longer fit the economic model of modern professional sports. In 2001, the Detroit Lions left the Silverdome and moved to Ford Field in downtown Detroit. The move was a turning point. Without its primary tenant, the Silverdome lost its primary source of revenue almost overnight. Parking lots that once filled with tens of thousands of cars sat empty. Event bookings slowed dramatically. Operating a stadium designed for massive crowds without a major tenant became financially unsustainable. Attempts were made to repurpose the building. Monster truck rallies, concerts, trade shows, and religious events were hosted sporadically. At various points, the Silverdome was used for filming, storage, and temporary exhibitions. But the costs were overwhelming. Heating, staffing, and maintaining such a large structure for limited events erased any potential profit. Deferred maintenance accumulated rapidly. Mechanical systems aged. Repairs were postponed. The roof, once a symbol of innovation, became the stadium's greatest weakness. Panels deteriorated, leaks appeared, water entered areas never designed to handle prolonged exposure. In 2009, the Pontiac Silverdome officially closed. What followed was a slow and unsettling transformation from landmark to ruin. In 2010, the Silverdome was put up for auction. The opening bid reflected its size, but no one bid. The price dropped repeatedly. Eventually, the stadium sold for just over $500,000, a fraction of its original construction cost and far less than the public investment that built it. New owners announced redevelopment plans, including proposals for retail space, entertainment venues, and industrial use. None materialized. The building sat empty. Weather accelerated the damage. Vandals entered. Urban explorers documented the decay. Images of the Silverdome's interior spread widely online. The roof partially collapsed, torn open by years of neglect. Rain and snow poured inside. The field flooded. Ice formed where fans once cheered. Seats were removed or destroyed. Graffiti covered walls. Birds nested in the rafters. Walking through the abandoned Silverdome felt surreal. Sunlight streamed through holes in the roof. Wind echoed through empty corridors. The silence was overwhelming. A place once defined by sound, movement, and spectacle now felt frozen in time. The darkness of the Silverdome story does not come from scandal or corruption. It comes from inevitability. The stadium was built for a specific economic moment that did not last. It assumed stable industries, continuous growth, and centralized entertainment. When those conditions changed, the building could not change with them. In 2017, demolition began. The implosion was planned as a public event. Thousands gathered to watch. Cameras rolled. The countdown reached 0. The first attempt failed. Explosives detonated, but the Silverdome remained standing. The roof collapsed inward, but the structure refused to fall. Engineers had underestimated the strength of the building. A second attempt was required. When the stadium finally came down, it collapsed into itself, leaving behind concrete and steel where one of the largest stadiums in the country once stood. Today, little remains of the Pontiac Silverdome. The land has been redeveloped. New structures occupy the site. Without photographs or memory, it would be difficult to imagine what once stood there. For those who remember it, the Silverdome remains a lesson. It shows what happens when ambition is built without flexibility, when size is mistaken for durability, when public investment is tied to assumptions that no longer hold. The Pontiac Silverdome did not fail because it was poorly built. It failed because the world it was built for disappeared.